Um, I think we're live. A bunch of people already came. Hello, everybody. It's random topics, a mudflood chat today with Baked and Wake
Hi, friends.
from United States. And so we have to discuss several topics. I think the first one is most important one that we had today is like a topic on the corona stuff, COVID pandemic. I don't know how to call it. The disaster everybody is talking about. So many virusologists today. Everybody is getting the degrees and online education in virusology and biomicrobiology and many different stuff. Are you a virusologist yet?
Like all of us, you're right. I'm continuously learning about this right now, whether we want to or not. But I would say I'm not still at this point, except only because there's all the stuff that we want to worry about and put in our heads about this, and there's a million theories out there already being put out by a lot of different people. Some of them are very compelling and scary. Okay. But I can only speak to my personal experience, and I can only speak to like my personal areas of expertise, right? Which certainly aren't viruses. What we can speak to though, and what I, tend to and have tried to do so far, like with what little I've discussed about this on my podcast, for example, is talk about what the impact is on us personally as not ill people, right? Just people living with this quarantine. I saw a post the other day on social that said really simply, it was like quarantine is the act of restricting the movements of sick people. And totalitarianism is the act of restricting the movements of healthy people. And so to me, what is most interesting, what's most worrisome, what's most worth thinking about right now is what's actually taking place, like that you can't argue. We're home, we're out of work, schools are closed, people are behaving differently in the very limited ways that they are leaving the house right now. And what part of the world do you have to live in right now to not have some level of this going on in your community? you know um you guys don't even have 4G in Russia, right, Philip? Are you guys in?
You mean 5G? Yeah, we don't have
Excuse
5G.
me. Yes. But are you guys in any kind of lockdown, full blown from top down right now, like we are?
Yeah, I'd like to
Mhm.
report that what kind of situation we are in. So it's like I would say it's like medium light lockdown
Okay.
situation where you like can be fined for going somewhere, but it's like not very big fine. Like it's like
Interesting, though.
around maybe $60 or something like this. So,
Okay.
and the second one is like maybe $75. But if you are sick and you were like, signing the document that you are aware of that you are put on quarantine on self isolation,
Mhm.
this is like the precedent for them to, uh, you know, give you a misdemeanor. Or if you have been infecting someone that supposedly died
Other
because of
level.
contact,
Yeah.
so this is like up to 7 years in jail for
Wow.
felony. And this is what is right now going on in Moscow, Russia, because I'm on the ground here and I see how things develop. Already, a couple of people been getting those fines, but not in our city.
Mhm.
So in our city is like not. I say medium light. So like they proclaiming you have to be self-isolating, but they are not giving us fines yet. But they wanted to make a QR code system where each and every person is supposed to have like this smartphone with him, or maybe a paper which he printed in his house
Mhm.
with his printer, home printer, and show the QR code. And the police that stops you or pulls you over gets your QR code checked, and if it's really the destination that you were supposed to be proclaiming you're supposed to be going to, this is okay. Or you, when you off the route, like maybe you going in circles or whatever, and they film you on the cameras, because they say like total surveillance systems is tested already, and they are already like ready to turn it on each and every time. We have facial recognition already set up in Moscow, so it's not far from the 5G technologies of China. It's mostly like, I would say, the modern technologies that each and every city has, including London, New York, and Chicago. So I bet you guys also in that situation where you have it in your town. So the facial recognition is what they're gonna do to keep us home. So this is the new step, and the 5G is supposedly to contain all your devices, and so you don't have to even take your phone for them to recognize you. So
Exactly, right, because we have the Internet of Things and we have 5G watches and things coming down the pipe, and our cars are 5G. It's really on target that you mention the legislation that'll be happening, like facial recognition related legislation, because not fake news. In my notes for my most recent podcast, but I didn't add it because I kind of ran long and didn't end up getting to it. I have notes on a story on my state of Washington, with Governor Jay Inslee just passing some historic. I'm kind of looking at it as I'm chatting with you here too on my screen, but Microsoft president, to read you guys the headline from GeekWire, so not fake news, just a very well-known tech blog here. Microsoft president calls Washington state's new facial recognition law, quote, a significant breakthrough. And that's March 31st, 2020. So we don't have to get into the details of it, but it's obviously him laying out the do's and don'ts of how to use facial recognition on everybody while magically protecting law-abiding citizens' rights and privacy, even though it's a obvious and continuous violation of everybody's illusion of any kind of privacy or freedom of movement, freedom of association, liberty. So
yeah, and by the way, we also do it while signing, clicking on our phones, that we like give the access to the cameras and stuff like this. All those apps upload all this information with our face recognized and 3D digitalized and all this stuff already been there, so they know
right.
Who are they looking for?
Right. And that's another thing. I really enjoyed your recent talk with Richard Lopez, and he covered a lot of bases with you, and you guys really did a great job of like touching on all the different highlights of all the different shit everybody's worried about that's going on with this. And we can talk about Depop agenda, or we could talk about Event 201, or we could talk about any of these other, these different notions of what's going on. But like, frankly, it's like at the end of the day, to me, the most important thing is the economic impact that's happening to everybody that we haven't even felt yet. This stuff is like on a little bit of a slow fuse in a lot of ways. I also think, however, that no matter what goes south or what progresses New World Order wise because of this, no matter how they put us in the position of like having to comply with whatever it might be, facial recognition and signing off on that, vaccinations for COVID-20 and signing off on that before our kids are allowed to go back to school, etc. I don't think that this paradigm shift is going to be successful in stopping one major side to this that I feel is already happening to me, is already happening in my family, is already happening right on my block, and that's this. When they tell us it's okay to go back to business as normal, business as usual, I think a lot of people, and I'm talking a lot of people, are going to be like, nah, forget all that. I started a side hustle while I was out, off of work, and I'm going to put my time in on this. I'm going to, produce some of my own food on my property with my family. And by some, I mean a lot. I think I know for a fact, gardeners are going crazy all over the country right now. And new gardeners have been born all over North America right now because people already know that we're going to have to worry about this at some point. And it's not going to be because of sheer overpopulation of the earth and immigrants overrunning our borders and actually eating our food out of the grocery stores. It's going to be because of stuff like this, where they've allowed the entire giant industrial world to kind of come to, if not an utter halt, a slow trickle. And that includes agriculture in a lot of ways. Our grocery stores are looking a little hinky right now. We're not out of food or out of fresh stuff remotely. There's some real ugly cucumbers being sold up at my corner grocery store already. I'll tell you that I haven't seen in a while. So I'm just glad, we're gardeners, that. So we garden a lot. But so even if this is just like with the hippies, all right, a generation or two back, it could be argued that they were almost allowed to happen in a way, and sort of fostered up to a point and then made to be a scapegoat, in a lot of ways. And hippies naturally tend to age out of, young hippies tend to age out of that phase of their lives as they achieve more in their capitalistic, pre-programmed goals, right? You accidentally end up being successful anyway. And at a certain point, you have a house and a family, and you don't really know how it happened, but you can't really act like a hippie anymore. So it'll be interesting. I feel like, though, that there's this 21st century vibe of, as much as we might be getting manipulated as a culture, as a society, as long as we do have these glowing rectangles that we can call them black mirrors, or we can call them, terrible Big Brother, programming machines, indoctrination machines. But people at the same time try to flip the script by using these same tools. Yeah, there you go. Don't panic. You will die anyways. Absolutely. Right. So I'm not trying to stress any of that, except for, saying maybe we have a choice to, choose to pursue whatever time we have to use it in a more healthy way and in a more positive way. Take a hold of whatever power we can. Personally, I think a lot of people are figuring that out right now. They're deciding if, what they're gonna do and how they're gonna deal with the COVID-20, with the COVID-21, whatever comes next, right? As Richard said, it's gonna be really different, whatever they do to us next. And they're gonna collect the data on us just like they're doing right now to understand exactly how weird we get and who gets weird and who starts doing stuff and where all our money gets spent. We know Americans buy toilet paper now, don't we? We know Americans buy ammo, don't we? Because believe me, they're buying ammo. They're also buying a lot of guns. They haven't bought this many guns since I don't even know when they were scared Obama was going to take their guns. So, there's a lot of big data analytics going into this all day. And that's, anybody who doesn't understand that, that's where you're missing the point. I'm not worried about whether COVID is caused by 5G or not, and whether the death tolls are accurate or not, or any of that. It's the actual unstoppable, forces that we have to deal with, which are, where does our currency come from? What control do we have over our own movements? Can you, make any moves whatsoever that aren't totally covered and controlled and understood and therefore permitted? This is social credit. You don't have to, we're in the social credit system already, and it's not just China, it's worldwide, in my opinion.
Yeah. Credit rating.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's dollars in the bank account or your ability to move freely in your own country, or your ability to look yourself in the mirror or in the TV screen when you pass by and they're flashing your picture up on what used to be a crosswalk signal showing that you're a jaywalker, that they know that from the past, and naming and shaming you on the streets, that kind of Black Mirror stuff probably isn't that far off. I've talked about some stuff that's really interesting. So how about instead of getting named and shamed by everybody else, you were looking at displays that only showed you specific information, and you and I could both be looking at the same display and each see a completely different message. And 50 people could be arrayed around us, and by 50 I really mean hundreds, and all of them see a different message on the same screen that's projected in front of them. That's real tech. That's something I've talked about on my podcast that's being developed in my state right now. It's being piloted in Chicago Airport, of all places. Okay. I don't know if I think it is O'Hare. So yeah, that's the stuff that's kind of on my mind as much as any other part of this right now.
Your area has like a bunch of different conspiracy stories, starting with the November 3rd and or March 11th situation that we had.
Yeah,
and also this. You probably had the first case of death from COVID, right? In the United States.
The U.S., one of the first. I think it was.
First.
Yeah, I think it might have been the first fatality.
People wrote me comments like, "We on the battleground." It was like 2 months ago.
Yeah,
they wrote me this from Washington State, and I was like, "Really? How are you?" And so a bunch of people contacted me from Washington State and said like, "Yeah, we had this situation that is out of control here. So, what are your witness? What have you heard?"
So, yeah, that's something I'm totally comfortable talking about, and certainly have a little bit on the podcast, but not too much yet. A little bit more in my last episode. Nobody in my house is sick. We're a family of 4. I have 2 young boys, elementary school age, so everybody's home. We've been fortunate that even though my wife was is a high school math teacher, so therefore was right before she, came home for the lockdown, was every day in contact with lots of kids, right? And a very large body of people, period, close to 2,000 kids in her school, I think. So that certainly qualifies as like large gatherings, right? Yeah, Seattle is bogus. Armoro, he knows what's up. So she was obviously probably exposed on some level. Like one of the reasons why they closed her school 2 or 3 days before the whole state went on lockdown was because one of their teacher meetings, trying to figure out what to do, somebody was exposed in that meeting, like his girlfriend at home or something like that. So this teacher's at the meeting, but he already was the reason. They were like, that's it, everybody out. They literally emergency locked them down that night after that meeting. She was lucky to get out of the building with her laptop. Everybody else had to make special arrangements to sneak back in over the next day or two, just in 1s and 2s to get their gear, the teachers that they needed to teach from home with. Before we went live, I told you, and I am comfortable with sharing without naming names, that although I haven't, nobody on my block either, by the way, in the homes right around us that I know of is sick. Not that they would come and knock on our door and tell you, hey, by the way, we got the COVID, or hang up a C in their front window or anything like that to let us know. But I have not heard anything about any of them. But what I have heard is from a good friend of mine who I was just checking in with, whose wife works in healthcare, that her hospital, and she's not, I don't mean works in healthcare, his wife's a nurse, she's been a nurse for years, and she's in management now with the nurses, but is still a practicing RN at a Seattle hospital. And I won't even name the hospital, but she's telling him that it's crazy at her hospital, that their ICU is overwhelmed, that they've got people in regular rooms that ordinarily wouldn't be in the condition that they're in. So that was super concerning and interesting, because this buddy of mine who I was talking to, he knows me and knows that I'm, baked and awake and a fucking, conspiracy weirdo. He's not really a woke guy. He's just totally down to earth motorcycle buddy of mine. So he's taking it seriously. His wife is taking it seriously. That's the closest firsthand account I have from somebody who's on the front lines of this. I have told people from my podcast that one of the things I do for side money is I drive for Amazon Flex, right? Everybody in the Northwest, your economy is either tied to these techs, you're either working for them directly.
I think we were like a little
losing
lose of
dropping.
signal.
No problem.
Just repeat what you were saying about the hospital, like the nurse. She was working. Okay.
Sure. So, my friend's wife is an actual RN. She's not a, somebody who works down at medical billing in the basement of the hospital or anything like that. She said that the hospital that she works at, overwhelmed ICU, overwhelmed emergency room. This was 2 weeks ago. Okay. So I should have checked in with my friend before we got on today, and I apologize, to see what the change has been, because I would love to know right now, is it worse or is it better? But he was taking it seriously. He's not a big woke guy. He's not a conspiracy theorist guy. Neither is his wife. They're just regular folks trying to live their lives. And so it certainly seems like stuff is going down around here and people are sick. You look on YouTube right now on my, conspiracy theory skewed homepage with all my suggested videos. And, this is the fakest thing since Sandy Hook was faked, and the fakest thing since the fakest thing before that. So, I don't really think that that's the case. I'm glad we're not sick. I don't know how scared I need to be when we do go out of the house, but we're following all the usual stupid rules that they're giving us. Being more afraid of it than we would be of a flu, being more afraid of it than we would be of a regular cold, right? We're all masking up and gloving up and handy-sannying every crevice of our bodies every time we enter and leave our houses, and burning our outfits in the front lawn, before we come back inside. Like people on, at least on the internet, are talking about how, oh yeah, everybody's got to strip in the garage and put their clothes in the washer, and that's got special sanitizing laundry detergent in it, and we don't even bring that back in the house until it's clean. Like that kind of stuff. We're not at that level around here. But we are more scared of it than we probably should be. I don't know. What? Aren't people supposed to get sick, pass it around a little bit, and gain the immunity naturally? Like, have we completely lost the ability to gain natural immunity to anything ever? Everything needs a fucking vaccine. Everything needs this level of fear associated with it. I don't know.
It's whatever you buy. If you buy,
I'm gonna die.
If you buy these advertisement of vaccine and you're like agreeing with something, you probably will be buying this vaccine program. So I wasn't making vaccines like since like I was like from high school, I maybe even earlier. So, and my kids were also out of vaccine program totally. We are like signing this decline document in the school, but they've been kind of abused to have vaccination in the schools right now. So if you don't have this list of vaccines you're supposed to have, you're like being totally on the check from the principal and stuff like this. And
can't go. They won't let you go. That it is real.
Yeah, but we have like signed the document and we said like we don't give a shit. We can go to whatever attorney office, court, and we have a right to do this from the Constitution. So we had like this document signed and a decline. So this is what's really going on. But what I wanted to ask you were saying like 2 weeks ago he was saying that, and were the numbers getting higher or in Washington? Or
they are, according to the internet, according to Apple News pushing stories down to my phone whether I want them or not. But the numbers are getting higher in our state up to just a couple days ago, as far as I know. Now, all the news on the national level seems to be focused on the East Coast right now. Like it swung from focusing on us initially to like a lot of focus on New York and New Jersey, particularly New York right now. So I know that I do know this. A couple days ago, what's today? Monday. So on Friday,
Before I forget, sorry.
Yeah.
The epicenter right now is very interesting because
Mhm.
the name of the area is Queens. The Queens is epicenter,
Okay.
and the most like hit district of Queens named Corona. So, by
Wow.
the way,
What?
by the
Oh
way,
my God. That's too much. That's too much. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of compelling and weird and scary coincidences going around about that early Corona. There's that Simpsons episode. You mentioned the concern that something's been going around the internet since back in October or so about Boris Johnson in intensive care. Interesting, he got worse. About the November 3rd possible event in Seattle. They thought it was going to be a bomb. They thought it was going to be this. They thought it was going to be that. But some terrible false flag. Nothing seemed to have ended up happening. But there was Simpsons predictions tied into that one, right? One of the guys who was making most of the videos about the 11-3 theory that I saw, at least initially, was doing
that
some Simpsons predictions.
from Germany. He was from
Yes,
Germany.
yes,
That
you
guy.
got Xavier or something, I
Yeah.
think his name was. So then they flipped it. Nothing happened on 11-3, and it sort of got moved forward by a few people to 3/11, right? And on 3/11 was around when March 11th was around when some of the first areas started being more restricted in movement here in North America and in the United States. I don't think we got. No, that might have been right about when they sent him home from school. So that might have been the official. Okay, go home from what? Yeah, MetroPal. I would say this is one of we're being reset as we speak. Potentially, I mean, this is right. This stuff doesn't happen overnight, right? But might happen over our lifetimes. Might happen over the second half of our lifetimes here. I was saying to you earlier, Philip, this is the weirdest time I've lived through. I think since 9/11, probably. And I think there you go. Tom Hanks tweeted it that he had it on March 11th. So they flipped that. Yeah, thank you for getting me back to that thought process too. By the way, was that we were worried about an 11-3 event, then we were worried about a 3/11 event, and Seattle's at the center of North America's hotspots. One of them, anyway. New York probably surpassed us through sheer dint of how many people are there. Right? I mean, there's like 5 times as many people in New York as in Washington State or more. So, but yeah, uh, I don't know. But I think we're continuously being manipulated. We know that. That's why we sit and spend the time we do doing what we do on the internet and creating the content that we do and trying to analyze and understand the topics and subject matter that we do. I don't disillusion myself that we're not just as able to be manipulated as anybody else and dragged along rabbit holes that are just great ways to spend decades of our lives while we're effectively neutralized from making any real change out in the world. I'm hoping though that like this particular crisis, this particular like worldwide crisis, really actually has a net positive effect on people in the form of people lightly waking up, as we continuously say, and just slightly altering their position and taking a little different like stance with themselves and their lives and their time, and just make a few different choices than you did before. And it could be moving your cell phones out of your bedroom so you don't look at them for the last half hour before you fall asleep at night, scrolling social for 30 minutes, ruining your night's sleep. Or it could be starting a garden, or it could be starting a new business or going back to school. Don't be afraid of real education just because we're out here educating ourselves on YouTube continuously. Like there's stuff to be learned at schools all over the place, right? Good, powerful skills, good things to learn. You guys, you can go learn some stuff. And even if that means you watch a little bit less of us, that's okay. It's really okay.
I wanted also to share this another coincidence that we found. Let's see. So you see this English to Hindi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if we so it doesn't have any actual translation. So
Okay.
coronavirus itself doesn't have actual translation in Hindi. So, but if you write it the opposite way, let's just
Oh, I was totally castigating myself for being a blind idiot, and I'm realizing I'm not looking at my alphabet on either side of that screen right now, am I? There we go.
So it's like they supposed to be rising star or something like this.
Corona is rising star. You know,
Uh,
I haven't followed it too closely.
I'm probably doing something wrong, so I'll be presenting it in one
There
of
we go.
the videos.
I know that some people have been saying watch the skies at night. There's apparently been some interesting nighttime skies events in a lot of places. I know last week they told us to look up and look west at night to see the International Space Station pass overhead on one particular night. We did it. We saw something. It was cool. It was just some blinky, a higher blinky than usual, moving fast. But what I was going to say in terms of a last report from Seattle as of last Friday, I know that the school's stay-at-home order was extended. It was originally till April 5th or April 3rd, but they moved it another 30 days back to May 3rd as of Friday. So these kids aren't going back yet, and I'll be interested to see if they go back before the end of the school year. Seriously, right now.
Yeah. So what we have actually is some decline in some economic sectors, like probably touristic sector is totally broke.
For sure. Yep.
Stuff like flowers, flowers for whatever funerals are suspended in all these countries.
All
a
of
bunch
it.
of funerals,
graduation parties that are being canceled right now or up in the air right now, right?
Like they say, so many funerals, but they are not doing actual funerals because nobody's in a funeral. So it's like total decline and stuff like this. So, and what sectors do you guys think are gonna be disappearing in the United States after this stuff is actually set up?
That's actually a great question. I think there's going to be a big effect. I think it's going to be felt across mostly the smaller businesses, independent businesses, right? The vanishing American small business sector will probably be hit really hard by this because, frankly, it just comes down to how long can any of us last with such reduced income based on, versus normal. So one of our favorite places as a family to travel is a local resort hotel, Great Wolf Lodge. It's a big old water park hotel with outdoor climbing gyms and all sorts of indoor restaurants and activities and things. So it's a building that not only it's like Las Vegas style, right? There's just as much going on inside the building as there is outside the building. That hotel is closed in Washington State, as are most of the resort, like the outlying resort hotels. Now, I don't know what hotels might be granted essential, like motels and hotels close to the airport that, people who are traveling for business still or having to somehow take, still travel by air. Those hotels might be open, but a lot of those resort hotels will be struggling. Do I care? I don't know. I mean, it's not my business, but they employed hundreds of people down in a really sleepy southern, Washington town that is probably the most important business in that whole town.
Yeah, I've heard like the raise in the claims, the jobless,
really high, almost 10 million people last week, something crazy like that in America.
It was like 3.3, and the next week is 6.6. I was like saying, what a coincidence, right? Those numbers always
No, there's a lot of really however much we want to turn it and look at it with our conspiracy goggles on, we can see all sorts of creepy shit about this event. But again, like more important to me is watch what happens. So here we go. Here, yeah, ISS. So we said to ourselves, like, what are they telling us to look at on that night? I don't know if ISS is a hoax or not. I don't know if the space station is up there or not. I don't care. I'm not worried about that today. What I'm interested to see is, so I got a friend just down the block, fellow gardener, bicycle buddy. He works for Boeing. He's not on the big sexy projects either. He's just like on the 737, which has been in trouble for months because of the grounding of that particular plane. They're all working from home. 6 months before Corona, half of his buddies who he was working with had already been kind of laid off because of the scale down on the 737 production, because of the 737 MAX mess with those planes that were crashing. Now, I think we won't see a Boeing go out of business. Right? They're military industrial complex first order. They're a top supplier to the military. They have a huge new refueling tanker that is their, bread and butter aircraft. So it'll be interesting to see a bunch of small businesses across every service industry, across every industry that's a burgeoning smaller industry, every single legal cannabis market where there's small early cottage industry players involved now. A lot of them are going to be washed under the bridge in the course of the next year or so because of interesting stuff both related to this and not. But these are not businesses that can continue to operate at like financial deficits for much longer at all, because they already have been. And even though something like cannabis in 30 states right now has been deemed essential, so to speak, and these businesses are ostensibly still open, they have to do it with weird restrictions on how many customers they can have in their stores or not, etc. right now. Anyway, all these restaurants, I think McDonald's can do as much business through a drive-through alone as they can through the drive-through and the lobby together.
I think no.
So you can't, right? You need them both. You might shut down the lobby at 11 o'clock to clean that shit for the night and keep making the money off the drive-through, and that's great. And those drive-throughs will keep those businesses open for a long time. But you just cut 65 or 70% of those buildings, and that's every fast food chain in the world is in that boat. And that's the ones who do have a drive-through, ready to go. So yeah, this is it's a transfer of wealth opportunity is gonna happen here right now, right? Everybody's savings is gonna go in the shitter. Everybody's gonna take the grant money from the government. They're gonna spend that on immediate needs. They're not gonna go out and buy shares in Apple on the stock market during this crisis, right? Because most of America, half of America, doesn't have more than like $500,000 in savings somewhere in a bank account in the whole damn household.
What about those payments?
We supposedly don't have to pay them back directly, but give me a break. That's going to come back on. That's coming back on us.
That will affect on inflation and decline in the price of the dollar itself. So
yeah, because that's the thing. So other countries are taking actions that are like ongoing to sustain their population or to mitigate the effects on their citizens, right? This is worse than a Band-Aid. It's like an insult, right? There's memes that are already going around about this with like, gold tooth grilled Donnie, like, all right, I'm gonna hit you up with about 1,200 or something, and you remember to fuck with your boy come election time. Like it's not even that it wouldn't be great to have $1,200 or $2,400 or $3,400, as it sounds like a household like mine, 2 adults, 2 kids, were their parents, that we should get $500 for each kid, the supposed disbursement. That sounds great, but is that really gonna make up for the fact that like the work I do, I drive for Amazon Flex half the time. That's my side gig. That's an app that you monitor as an independent contractor to go pick up deliveries for Amazon. Those people who drive up to your houses, people who somebody rolls up to your place in a Honda Civic and drop kicks a package over your hedge into your front yard. That's what I do. And that has dried up. Those that app is usually filled with dozens of shifts per day. And I've been going in and getting loaded light. So again, this is firsthand experience. This is my experience with physically interfacing with Amazon warehouses. I drive there in my van, go pick up some packages. You usually pick up 3.5, 4 hour shift. You do 50, 60 packages at a time somewhere in town. It's pretty fun, frankly. Pretty mellow. That app is empty right now. There's hardly any offers in it at all. For the last 3 weeks, I've gone in and I've gotten loaded light several times. And when I say light, I mean gone in and left with, my record is 2 packages.
Shit.
All right. Another time was like 4. Another time was 5. That's a big difference.
Let me show what actually is going on. This is the graph. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
First one is groceries. Groceries have decline of 18% in check, but 5% in gross money. So it's like total income.
Mm-hmm.
So the average, not the average check, but the number of the checks declined 18%. So number of customers, obviously, but the income raised 5%. Alcohol, the number of customers and checks of customers declined 2%, and raise of income 15%.
Yeah.
Beer markets, -4 customers, +3% in income. Tobacco, -34 in customers and +21 in income. That is because many people started to buy it online. So this is what explains. Clothes, 90% down, both in income and customers.
Yep.
Shoes,
I'm shopping for clothes right now.
83% down. Cosmetics, 81% down. Sport goods, -73% down in checks and customers, and 11% up in income. So everybody's buying online. So everybody starts to buy all these, stuff for home fitness and stuff like this.
You're right. And Richard touched on it on your guys' last chat, how you're showing it too. We see where the money goes already, and that's a big part of what's interesting about this event. And I guess we should all just pay just as much attention to it as big business does, and be aware of what we as a society are doing with our money at a time like this.
So mostly everything has a decline in customers and money, but here we see the medical purpose, the goods of medical purpose. So it's -24 in customers, but +38 in income. So this is like mask, respirators, and all this stuff. So let's see.
That's interesting stuff. It's interesting times. Well, I mean, we're out here. We've been gardening for years, but we're out here digging up twice as much of our backyard as we ever have before. I built a second small greenhouse for our operation. Our operation, literally trying to, up until this point, grow a few tomatoes and peas every year for salad in the summertime. But, you better believe we're going to be doing a little bit more with it this year. But we have laying hens. We have, chickens, backyard hens. We also keep game birds, quail, for both their eggs and for their meat. So we're doing a little bit more than some folks are around here in terms of trying to be sustainable. We're not even close to off grid, not remotely or completely, independent. We're not sovereign citizens or anything like that. So, but yeah. So
it was nice having you today. And what I wanted to say is just give me an update to your friends' information, maybe because I'm doing the video about this Corona stuff.
I'll be happy.
And connection to 5G and stuff like this. It was started to be a little video about 5G connection to coronavirus, and then it grows and growing. And now, right now, I'm like in the middle of terrible amount of information, so I'm like totally lost. And I'm also monitoring the Film the Hospital group on Facebook.
Okay.
Haven't seen any decent evidence yet, but a bunch of people filming only outsides and whole rooms.
These supposedly empty hospitals, right?
Yeah, so
Yep.
I mean, asking them questions and trying to find out the truth is like very difficult because people think that I'm trying to criticize them, or maybe I'm a shill or something. I'm not. I'm some government agent or whatever who's like making this confirmation of fake news or something.
Mhm.
But actually just trying to ask questions to compose really decent information, because
Right.
if we have like a case like a hospital in Mount Sinai, which is like in Central Park in New York, and we have like evidence of some tents and like people filming a bunch of stuff. We have Brooklyn evidence where all those trucks load in with the corpses. We have like evidence of people standing in lines and somewhere, and we have people who are Russian, actually Russian people living in the United States, that sending me links with these videos where they are driving and seeing those trucks here, those refrigerators there, people in the line here, emergencies like everywhere in New York. I mean, uh, what to believe? Those
Yep.
guys who filming know people on the streets around the hospitals, or those who filming that there's something going on? So I wanted to compare those facts, because
We're seeing both.
people want need the truth, because it's not far from the day that everybody's gonna know someone who had something like supposedly
Right.
this case or not, because we have like a bunch of people here who have pneumonias, bronchitis. In fact, 75 plus thousand this year died in United States from the flu, guys. 75,000. And it was flu before the coronavirus started. So just think about it. So
Yeah,
I
I don't
mean,
want to be responsible for giving anybody bad advice, but I feel like we're a little bit more afraid of this than we really should be. We've been sort of spun up into a state where we're a little more afraid of this than we probably really should be. I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what, I will be happy to update you. You know I will. And I'll be looking forward to hearing what you learn, because I do appreciate the tone that you've had all along with this entire crisis since it started. And you totally come across to me as continuing to figure it out. You're not telling us that you figured it out. You're taking your time. You're collecting information still and sharing. So, um, yeah, no, it is the whole planet. It's a mess. It's a mess. Anyway, all right, Philip.
yeah, see you later. Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
everybody, who
Thank you. Yeah,
joined.
I got to jump off, but thank you so much for reaching out and touching base back with me. And we'll be talking on the back channels for sure.
Yeah, see you later, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Stay tuned.